Hey guys, Coach Nick Paulson. I'm just going to quickly go over how to approach tee work as far as routine goes and little things mechanically that you want to keep tabs on as your hit kid is taking his swings. One thing about tee work that is a huge philosophy of mine is never working on one pitch. So really we're not just working on pitches down the middle. We're working on inside, outside, low, high and inside, low and inside, high and outside, low and outside. So right there I just explained 9 different locations that we need to practice. So the worst thing you can do is put the tee right down the middle, take all your swings right down the middle, because really you're only teaching yourself to work on one pitch. And there's 2 goals in my mind for tee work. One is to correct flawed mechanics, but also the second one is to really practice the swings relative to each pitch. So for example, there's a little nuance that's different on the inside pitch than there is on the outside pitch. Same with high, same with low. So I'm going to kind of take you quickly over how to approach it and what you want to look for. So I'm going to hop over. Right now we've got the tee set up right down the middle, belt high. And that's kind of how I'm going to start. I'm really just going to get my swing loose. So I'm going to take 5 down the middle. I'll act like I took 5. Okay. So let's just say I took 5. Now notice where the tee is relative to the plate. And notice where I am relative to the plate in the tee. So first things first, my back foot is at the back part right by this bucket. Now one thing I really like about the bucket being there is if you got a kid who's really dropping his hands down, that bucket's going to let him know every time. So that in its own self, not only is it a marker for my back foot, but it's also a feedback constraint that allows me to know how low my hands were in the swing. So that's why that's there. Now if I was going to progress to the inside pitch, I would take this tee and I would move it to the inside corner. The middle of the tee is going to be right in line with the corner. And I'm going to put the tee about a foot out in front of the plate. And the reason for that is because I have less room for my arms. So in order to hit this pitch effectively, for example, if the tee was right here, in the same position I put it down the middle, I'm not going to have much room in order to get my hands here. So if you're putting the tee middle and not putting it, or putting the tee with the same depth as you would when it's down the middle, I have no room to get extended. It's going to teach me to push my hands inside rather than when the tee is a foot out in front of the plate. It allows me to have that same room I had that was down the middle. So really this is teaching me to catch the ball out in front, really rotate, and I can still have my hands kind of come at the right time. Really you can see here I'm just steering the knob inside, but really I'm not really doing anything. I'm just kind of holding my hands right here. And my rotation is pulling me inside. So really our hands want to wait the longest before they fire on the inside pitch. And we want to catch the ball out in front. So that's the inside pitch. The outside pitch, notice the difference. Middle, just out in front of the plate. Inside, a foot out in front of the plate. Outside pitch, I'm actually putting it on the edge of the outside corner of the plate. And the reason being is for the outside pitch, we need to let the ball get deep. So we don't want to put the tee on the outside corner here, just out in front of the plate, just like we did middle, because now that's teaching me to really reach out towards the ball. Whereas if the tee's back here, and I'm letting the ball get deep, boom. Now I can really get my body into it without feeling like my hands got to dive out to the baseball. So that's pretty much the gist of inside, middle, outside. When you're working high and low, work at the same spot you would on the first one, right down the middle, belt high. Now if I was working low, I would push this tee all the way to the bottom as low as I can. Working on this pitch here, the biggest thing with this pitch is not to reach down. This bucket's gonna let me know if I'm reaching down. I wanna use my back leg to lower me down. And now I'm right there on the baseball where I want to be. The next location, we're going to go inside tee, or high tee, sorry, not inside. We already explained inside. High tee. See if I can get this to stay. All right. So this is our high tee. Notice out in front of the plate, down the middle, and I really like to measure this up to about the sternum height or the nipple line area. And one thing I always explain to kids when we're working on this pitch, everyone thinks it's too high. Well, yeah, it is too high, but there's a ton of value in being able to hit this pitch with consistency. And another thing I like to explain is, at the end of the day, whether it's a strike or not, that's up to the guy behind the plate. And as we all know in Little League, strike zones are big. So I'd rather teach my kid to have the confidence to hit this pitch rather than to take this and let him decide what's going to happen to my fate. So we want to trust ourselves and teach ourselves to hit this pitch so that we have confidence pulling the trigger when we see this pitch in a game. So high tee, the biggest key to the high tee is not to let your hands get below the ball. So if I get here and I turn and my hands are below the ball, you can see this path to the ball. The only way I can make a connection is going here, and that's going to hit me straight up in the air. Most of the time though, you're not even going to hit that ball if your hands are below. So I got to keep this knob and my hands at the same height as the ball, if not higher, and you can see how my barrel is going straight through. Okay, so that's high, low, middle, inside, outside. You could also combine them. So if I wanted to work high and inside pitch, I would take my high tee and I would move it a foot out in front of the plate on the inside corner. High and outside. I got my high outside tee. It's placed on the very outside corner on the plate. Same with low. Low and inside, low and outside. Pretty self-explanatory. Now another thing I wanted to go over was how to place constraints around your kid. So everyone's got mechanical things that they're trying to improve upon, and the best way I've found to correct certain mechanics is, rather than trying to give your son a ton of verbal information, place an object or something in the space that he wants to occupy that he shouldn't be occupying. So for example, I've got this bucket back here, right? Well, if I drop my hands, guess what I'm hitting? I'm hitting that bucket. I really like to use a second tee. And the reason why is, if I put this second tee right here, and I've got a kid who likes to really reach out to the baseball. So for example, when the tee is not here, his swing looks like this. And he ends up hitting the ball consistently on this part of his bat, rather than the barrel or the sweet spot of the bat that we're really trying to hit the ball with. And that's really the key to hitting, is really just putting your sweet spot or your barrel on the ball. So I like to put a second tee right here, and the worse their problem is, the more you could scoot it closer and farther away. But right now that this tee top is occupying the space that I wanted to go to, it's going to force me to, now instead of just hitting the ball, I'm thinking, how can I hit the ball but not hit that tee? And that thought process is the key to really having your kid make the connection between what the adjustment needs to be. So if I for example, I just took my first swing and I smacked that tee, and now I'm embarrassed because I knocked the tee over, I didn't hit the ball, I didn't do it right. So that really forces and brings about the adjustment naturally when you place a constraint right there. So I like to use this tee for casting out. So if I'm gonna cast out, I'm gonna smack this tee every time. He's gonna give feedback, and then when I make the correction, I hit the ball without hitting that tee. I know that feeling is what I'm trying to feel. That's the right feeling. That's the right way to swing. So that's just the power of constraints. I've seen a ton of good changes when I place constraints there between the bucket, this second tee overlap. Another thing I like to do is I like to take this same tee, and I like to place it in the back area as well. So where you get a kid who reaches out and casts around, he's gonna hit this tee over here. Whereas if it's up nice and high, now I've got to clear it. So now I hit the ball and I'm trying to get over the top of that tee. This is pretty common with kids who hit a ton of ground balls. A lot of it is they don't get a lot of lift in their finish. So that's the point of this constraint over here. Another thing you may see that you've been wondering about in this video is this guy right here. Really what this guy is, his job is to align stances correctly. So if you know me and you've seen me working with a lot of kids, you know that I like to personalize each kid's stance based on the way they move. So for example, my favorite thing for this guy is when you got a kid who is stepping out constantly. So for example, if I'm a kid who loves to step out, well, as soon as this guy is right in the back part of my heels, if I go to step out, now I'm landing on this tool and it's providing me feedback about where I am. And you know, not everyone has this. You could kind of get creative with your own. You could use bats. You could use anything that if they step on it, they're gonna feel it. Another one I like to use is a bucket. I like to use gloves. But it's really about being a disrupting element to that negative mechanics. So that's something that I've found that you guys can kind of play around with at home. It's really about putting constraints in the negative space that their bad mechanics take them to. And if we can disrupt that space, we can change their habits and change their mechanics. So that's kind of the main thing I wanted to go over with tee work. I know a lot of you guys know how to hit off the tee, but really is when I'm working with kids off the tee in my lessons, it's this stuff that I'm really paying attention to and trying to correct. So that's about it.